Hello, this is Winnie Hay. In this video, I will address some of the key considerations on the financial side of career management. In order to become a well-informed manager of your finance, you need to, first of all, stop the fear of money. Hello, this is Winnie Hay. In this video, I will address some of the key considerations on the financial side of career management. In order to become a well-informed manager of your finance, you need to, first of all, stop the fear of money. Most people are uncomfortable thinking and talking about money for a variety of reasons. As a starting point, you need to be honest with yourself about your philosophy about money and not being afraid of thinking about it and managing it rationally. Understanding your own financial needs and wants. Negotiating aggressively to reach a compensation level that is higher than what the employer may have envisioned, but is lower than what you really need, is not a success. The bottom line is, whatever compensation level you can negotiate to achieve needs to meet your needs. Understand the industry pay range for your position and determine if it aligns with your needs. In the United States, some of the states require that their employers disclose the pay range, so you get a good sense. Also, Glassdoor is a good resource for you to get a sense of the pay range for the type of role and for the particular employer that you're targeting. Understand how the employers set the pay ranges so that you know how to negotiate effectively without worrying about being unreasonable. Everybody's needs and wants are different. It is important to know yours. I'm sure you're familiar with all of these items listed. The key is to create your unique list. And I want to highlight your tax obligations. It's something that people tend to neglect when they think about their finances. If you work as an employee, it is a bit easier for you than those who work as freelancers because your employers will withhold taxes with each paycheck. For freelancers, it is important to put money aside every time you get paid. I have heard too many stories about freelancers not having money to pay for taxes when it's time to file income tax. It is something to be mindful of. Here's an income statement. It is one of the key financial statements used by both for-profit and not-for-profit organizations. It lists the total revenues and expenses that occur over the specified period, leading to a total calculation of how much money was gained or lost. I've applied this method to my personal financial management. I think this tool is especially useful for freelancers because you need to track multiple income sources and you incur costs that may vary due to the projects that you accept. As you see in this example, you can track your different sources of income month by month. For freelancers, what are some examples of variable costs? They are things like mileage, office supplies, and travel expenses. Examples of fixed costs will be the types of costs that you incur whether you have income or not. For example, rent or mortgage, utilities, food, health insurance, and car insurance. Another thing I want to point out is that it is a good idea to budget monthly because your income and costs may vary from month to month. For example, you may pay for your car insurance once a year rather than monthly. You don't want that to jump out at you to surprise you. One final thing. A budget is a plan. You need to compare your plan against what actually happens in order to know whether you're living within your means and whether you need to make adjustments to your plan. The example on the left shows a monthly comparison between budget and actual. The example on the right does the same comparison for an annual view. Another thing to bear in mind is a dollar may carry a different value based on where it is spent. This is a tool that is designed to compare cost of living in the United States. In this example, if you live in San Francisco making $50,000 a year, you only need $29,000 to maintain the same standard of living in Bellingham, Washington. I don't know if there are similar tools in other countries, but if you don't have a tool like this in your country, you would want to consider how far your money can go in different locations. A good way to start is to compare housing cost. For example, if you need a two-bedroom apartment, find out how much a two-bedroom apartment will cost in rent in two different locations, and that will give you a good sense of the differences of how much a dollar will mean in different locations. In this next section, I will talk about how human resources department work in organizations. And why is this important to you? If you understand the parameters of HR's work, it helps you see the variables you need to consider and how you can best negotiate. The employer size matters when it comes to human resources practices. The cutoff line is often 50 employees in the United States. In a small organization, there probably is not a lot of structure compared to bigger ones. When it comes to compensation negotiation, it is usually up to negotiation with the owner. In larger organizations, they typically will have a well-structured human resources department and human resources practice. Not a lot of flexibility compared to the smaller organizations. You can negotiate within the band for your position. Speaking of salary band, I want to talk about the concept of compensation benchmark. HR professionals take their job description and they compare it against similar jobs in similar locations to determine the compensation level. In other words, in most cases, the salary offered to you is not a random number. And employers do this to ensure equity and competitiveness in the marketplace. HR typically will set a range for a position. For example, a job's maximum is $100,000 a year, and minimum may be $80,000 a year. So the midpoint is $90,000 a year. In a salary discussion, it's very reasonable for you to ask what the budget pay range is for the position. In general, employers will not likely pay a new hire at the maximum rate because that means there's no room for growth. So, for example, if you have decided that you need at least $60,000 in cash compensation, in a job interview, you find out that the pay range for the job is $30,000 to $50,000. This is an indication to you that from a financial perspective, the job is probably not a good fit for you because you need more than what their maximum rate would offer. If the salary you're offered is below the midpoint, you can probably try to make the case to try to push it to the midpoint. The next thing I want to review with you is the concept of exempt versus non-exempt worker status. I have managed workers in more than 10 countries. Each country may use different terms, but in general, workers are put in two big categories based on analysis of their duties, responsibilities, and salary. Exempt employees are sometimes called salaried employees and sometimes called management staff. The non-exempt employees are sometimes called the hourly employees and sometimes called administrative staff. There are implications in terms of which category your position falls under. The non-exempt employees who are paid by the hour are typically entitled to overtime. In some cases, the overtime income is quite significant. If you accept a position that requires working long hours, but you are an exempt employee who does not receive overtime pay, essentially your real hourly rate is reduced. But there are benefits in being in the exempt category because in most cases, exempt employees receive a higher bonus percentage and they have benefits and they receive higher raises. Another nuance I want to point out is that just because your job title has manager in it does not automatically make you an exempt employee. The key point here is before you accept the position, find out if your position is classified as exempt or non-exempt and understand the implications before you accept the position. And this is a very common question to ask, so please don't feel hesitant when you ask this question. This slide shows the typical benefits an employee may receive in the United States. Of course, it varies by organization. An employer may provide only the medical insurance, and that's it. Some employers may provide all of these benefits and more, but these are the typical ones. Employers spend money on these benefits on behalf of the employees, even though employees don't see the money coming to them. The general rule of thumb is this. On top of paying an employee the cash salary, an employer has to spend another 30% of the employee's cash compensation on benefits. If you are comparing multiple offers, I suggest that you factor in benefits in order to get the whole compensation picture. Employers typically have good documentation on all the benefits they offer, which makes it easy for you to make comparisons. I'm not going to walk you through all these items in this video, but if you would like to learn more about these benefits, please feel free to make an appointment with one of the CACS career advisors. Now, I want to talk about the best practices. The first two bullet points are about knowing yourself. If you're armed with your own budget, and if you're comfortable with the pay range of the role based on your own research, you have removed 50% of the stress going into the compensation discussion. And these two items are totally within your power to prepare for. Next, I want to urge you to look beyond salary. Consider total compensation, such as bonus, equity, benefits, retirement contributions, professional development funds, remote work, flexibility, etc. Sometimes perks can make a huge difference if salary is less flexible. And remember, if you get to the point of negotiating compensation, the employer clearly wants to hire you. They are on your side. They want to find a way to hire you, provided that it is within their budget. It is a collaboration, not a confrontation. And who knows, this job may not work out. There may be a future job that is just right for you. So it is important to remember to keep the tone positive and professional. Finally, in any negotiation, you have a 50-50 chance of reaching a deal. If the compensation package is not going to meet your needs, it's better to walk away from it rather than accepting it. This makes room for the next opportunity for you. Thank you for your attention. I hope you found this overview helpful for you.